Any questions? We about to say to all of our mothers and fathers, those who know and those who do not know, those of our souls that do not know, all of our ancestors that are need for us, all of our ancestors that are in the water, all of our ancestors that are in Africa, and all of our ancestors that are abroad. Iba say iron down with us. Iba say dumbbell with us. Iba etu okoburu upon or ita our take that say everything there like that. Iba so tell they mata. Iba obuna wo ni they come from. Iba batala research in both on our rule is that part of Iba sumo or the river going the river doing. Iba put there back and Iba say go. Iba tell like hey as the room way the way. Iba there it all. Keeping my say, all members of the elders of eBay. Keeping my say, all members who are present virtually and physically. I say, so I am Awo Fashoro, also known as Brother Salim or Baba Tony. And we are doing a presentation today on Egungun, ancestral veneration in Africa and in the New World. I'm going to talk briefly just about some terms, just so we just have an understanding of what it is that people are talking about, these different groups, what it is when people say Egun, people say ancestors, people say Egungun, or we talking about deceased relatives. But the main purpose of what we're going to be talking about today is practicality. How, as Africans in America, how can we utilize the ancestors? How can we tap into the ancestral power? Because our journey with ancestors and our relationship to ancestors is quite different from those who are back home. It's even quite different from those in Brazil, in Cuba, in Trinidad, and other places that had Catholicism. So where there was Catholicism, they were able to preserve the culture somewhere, synchronize the culture with Catholicism, because we were able to disguise our spiritual practices as saint veneration, which they really represent the various regions. When African Americans came to church, we started having experiences like the Holy Ghost and whatnot. Though that's something that never went on in the Christian church, it never went on in the Catholic church, it never went on anywhere else except in really the Baptist church. You know, like in Trinidad, they have something called Shango Baptist, where they synchronize African American Baptist church with Shango worship, Shango veneration. So our practice is somewhat synchronized because our ancestors relate to us through Christianity. You know, if my grandma was living, she'd be like, you know, I don't want nothing to do with none of that voodoo stuff, what they call dark. So eventually our ancestors will come to a point to where they start to accept the things that we do once they see that it's all God, it's all love, but they are who they are. So we call them with something that they can relate to. We call them with, you know, a gospel song, the Negro spiritual, something that they can relate to. You know, they gonna ease in. First they be like, you know, they come in, we have a little African ceremony. They might be like, they might be standing around and just looking before they want to come in and start participating in dancing, because that's not how they used to relate to God. So first we're gonna do some definitions. First definition is of Egungun. You spell that E-G-U-N-G-U-N, Egungun. And Egungun literally means bones, bones and skeletons. But we also have the masquerade. So when people refer to Egungun, they generally refer to the masquerade of Egungun. U-N-G-U-N, Egungun, which means bones, bones and skeletons, and also masquerade. The word Egun, E-G-U-N, so that's just E-G-U-N. That's generally what we refer to in the Lukumi tradition. They call them Eguns, but they might have two G's. So when we say Eguns over here, we're talking about just ancestral spirits. Not any ancestral spirits, so we're talking about elevated ancestors. Those who lived a clean and moral life, generally those who live past the age of 40, those who reproduce children because they brought something to the earth. So reproducing is something that's very important in our culture because you're leaving something to the earth. It is said that those who don't reproduce, don't leave to the earth, they might be witches because they're not bringing nothing to the earth. They're just taking away from the earth, unless they are people who are part of some type of noble cause, doing things to uplift humanity, or they started some type of foundation, they started things and leaving things on the earth, leaving some type of legacy behind if they're not reproducing their children. Then they can be honored as an elevator, honored as an equal. So the next word is Orun. That's O-R-U-N. Orun. O-R-U-N. And Orun means heaven. Aye is the next word. That's A-I-Y-E. Aye means earth. And so what we call the ancestors are the Ara, that's A-R-A, Orun, dwellers of heaven or dwellers of the sky. Ara Orun. That's what we call, that's the Yoruba word for another word for ancestors or Amen, which are dwellers of the sky. So another word is Oju, Orori, Oju, that's O-J-U space O-R-O-R-I, and that means grave site. Or Ibale, which is spelled I-G-B-A-L-E, or O-J-U-B-O, that means community grave site. That's Ibale. I-G-B-A-L-E, Ibale. Or Ojubo, community grave site. So, Ibashe, Ibashe. That's I-B-A space She, S-E, Ibashe. And that means pay homage to. Mojuba, M-O-J-U-B-A, means give reverence to. And Iba Ara Torun, that's I-B-A, Iba Ara, A-R-A-T-O-R-U-N, means rest in peace. And Ashe, A-S-E, means may it be so. I have to make that clear because a lot of people call the ancestors with the word Ashe, but Ashe is not a way to call the ancestors. Ashe is just an affirmation, which you say at the end of a prayer. Ashe means may it be so. So you hear people saying so and so's name, Ashe, so and so's name, Ashe. But the proper way is we say Mojuba, we give reverence to. Ibashe, we pay homage to. And we say Iba Ibada Torun, rest in peace. After we say the deceased rest of his name, say Ibada Torun. So if I say my grandfather, Henry Brown, Ibada Torun. Ibashe Henry Brown. We pay homage to Henry Brown. Ibada Torun. So may his soul rest in peace. Mojuba, Baba Henry Brown. We give reverence to Henry Brown. And so, in our culture, we don't really worship ancestors as people would think. So we say we worship the dead. Christian philosophy, they say let the dead bury the dead. We don't. worship our ancestors. We commune with our ancestors. So we just continue the relationship. That's all. You know, if my grandmother was living and I had a bond with my grandmother, and she crosses over to the other side, that relationship never ends. We just continue the relationship. You know, we're not breaking nothing. It's not nothing strange. It's not nothing spooky. And we just commune with our ancestors, venerate them. Just because we are not in the physical flesh does not mean that it's the end of us. Just like if you have a car outside and the engine blows out, you can replace the engine. You know, our physical bodies are just physical vehicles. We are not the flesh, though. We are the spirit. And so our spirit carries on, our soul carries on. And so do our ancestors' souls carry on. So, okay, those are some terms. And so we have different types of egungun. There are several different types of egungun, many different types. So each family can have their own egungun. Each village can have their own egungun. A country can have their own egungun. Because egungun simply means masquerade. And so what they would do is they would, for instance, in my family, if we had egungun rites in our family, we had to be initiated to egungun, and there would be a person who wears the egungun masquerade. And only males can be initiated to egungun. With that initiated, only males can wear the masquerade. It is said that once upon a time, women wore the masquerade, but it was stopped due to how powerful women nature was. So a lot of this tradition, people think that that this tradition is chauvinistic or that it's dominated by males, but it's not really. You know what I'm saying? Because everything's facilitated by women. You know, so the older women in the egungun society, they are the ones that do the prayers, the libations. They prepare a lot of rituals. They help piece together the costumes. They just don't wear the costume. Only a male can wear the elegan. That's the name of it. One of the names of what they call the masquerade. Only a male can wear it. During this time, when a person is wearing the egungun masquerade, they come under possession. And so it's generally a person who has mediumship capabilities. Inside of the masquerade, that's made of a very expensive cloth, there are all types of medicines and sacred materials that are in the cloth. So it gives the ability for the masquerade itself, once it's paraded. So that means once the masquerade is walking through the village, walking through the town, walking through the homes, the masquerade itself is healing and bringing peace to the community. It's bringing resolve to issues. The medium of the masquerade, they give lessons, they give cleansings, they're able to heal people, they're able to give messages to people. So you have egungun iya, which is an egungun that represents the mother's lineage. Egungun baba, which is an egungun that represents the father's lineage. So baba means father, iya means mother. Egungun ologun are ancestral warrior spirits, people that fought for the liberation of our people. So if we were to resurrect the egungun for us as Africans in America, we would have like, you know, Marcus Garvey or Malcolm X, warrior spirits, people that really fought for us. They would be classified as egungun ologun. Then you have egungun aye. That means our living parents on earth. So that means that we should respect our parents on earth just as we would if they were deceased. You don't want to wait till our parents are deceased to start honoring them. You know, we have to honor our mothers and fathers so that they belong, as they say in the Christian text. Then you have egungun orisha. That's the ancestral priest of a particular orisha, or the original ancestor that became an orisha. So, like for instance, we have Shango, and a lot of the other orisha were actually humans at one point in time that lived, and they became elevated to become ancestors. So you would have people of the Shango code who were an egungun venerating Shango. The Shango, who was a king, before he got elevated to become a Orisha. So the importance of us venerating our ancestors and venerating whom is for mainly our healing and for continuity of our race, continuity of our families. We have a lot of ancestral curses as us being the diaspora. A lot of things that we have to heal up from traumas that's due to slavery. We have alcoholism, we have drug abuse, we have molestation, we have incest, child abuse, we have disease states of consciousness, poor diets, poverty mindsets, various other traumas that ancestral generations help us to heal. So when we have shadow work for ourselves, we also have to do shadow work for our ancestors. It is said that there are 9 different realms into the spiritual. And so we just, the closest realm, we just in one dimension, the 4th dimension. And that's the closest way that our ancestors communicate with us. That's the closest realm that's closest to the earth. But there are other levels that are higher and higher. So it's said that we venerate our ancestors for 16 generations back, 16 generations forward. So all the things that we do now on our life, we should be preparing for our children to come after us and for ourselves. So if I'm building generational wealth, if I'm building legacy for myself, I'm actually making things good for my family. So when I come back, I'm coming back as a king. I'm coming back as somebody. Very wealthy. I'm coming back into a land that my family owns. So these are just two different types of ancestor masquerades that you see. And so these masquerades are made with very expensive material. And you have different members of the family, different members of the community, different members of the village that will get together and everybody will contribute a piece of material. The more extensive and elaborate your masquerade is, it shows your nobility. So the ancestral masquerade of a king would be different from a common person. And it's filled with all types of medicine and various different cloths. And it's filled with various different layers. The mask itself, the masquerade itself is something that's very magical and very powerful in itself. And each family should have their own Egungun masquerade. Each community or each village should have their own Egungun masquerade. If we had somebody that fought for the liberation of Chicago itself could have an Egungun. And when we parade the Egungun through the streets, it will help to keep down some of the violence that's going on in Chicago. But we are not on that level yet. We have to start. We have to take baby steps. So some of the offerings that they make to Egungun is akara, bean cakes, moi moi, which is maize, bran meal, cock, rooster, tyrate pepper, which is guinea pepper, yams, goat, cola nuts, water, and palm oil, and no salt. Typically in traditional African veneration of ancestor worship, when you prepare them foods, you don't give them salt. But really, to no spirit, when you're doing stuff for African way, you don't put salt in none of the food that you prepare for the ancestors. Okay. And so you have Odu Ifa, which are the 16 sacred principles of Ifa. And so it is said that all things are born from the 16 sacred Odu Ifa. Odu, you spell that O-D-U. Ifa is I-F-A. And so everything that is, was, or will be was born from the 16 combinations of the sacred Odu Ifa, which equals 256. Those 256 possibilities of anything that could be going on with a person. Everything that is, was, or will be was created from the 16 Odu Ifa. And so, in the sacred Odu called Okanran Ogunda, we also call that Odu the mask of Oya. So some people, you see various masks representing the Eguns. And Egun worship is something that's all over the world. No matter what race, caste, creed you are, you don't need to be initiated to worship ancestors. To get into the deeper levels of Egungun, you definitely have to be initiated. You have to be a person that be able to possess spirit and be a medium, so the collective ancestral spirit can speak through you. And you're gonna wear the masquerade and deal with Egun in a certain way. Mostly the African way, you have to be initiated to Egun practice. So the mask of Oya comes from the sacred Odu called Okanran Ogunda. And this is why you see when people have an Oya shrine, you see Oya with, they have different masks on that, the masquerades, because that really represents her ninth child, Egungun. It is said that Oya gave birth to 9 children, and her ninth child's name was Egungun. All of her children were boys. Here's the story. It says, in the beginning, Oya was barren, and she used the queen ant as a fertility child. Ifa warned her that delivering the child in the anthill would be dangerous. She didn't listen to what she was told. And her last son, Egungun, had been attacked by the warrior ants inside the anthill. And so they scarred his face. They scarred his face. And so that no one would look at the marks upon his face, Oya covered him with a mask. It's also said that he destroyed his vocal cords. So when a person gets possessed by Egungun, first of all, this person is kept away from people, and people don't know who it is that's under the mask. And when the Egungun speaks, he speaks in a different voice. It's not the voice of the person who's behind the mask. That's also how you know it's something divine. But that story is called the Mask of Oya. And so we also give Oya a mask because she helps to uncover people. She also helps to reveal people's true intentions. People only present themselves with a mask, so sometimes it takes years to really uncover the layers of a person. But that's one thing that Oya does, is to help us unfold those layers before they reveal them to us. And it's one thing our ancestors do. They have an advantage because they live in the spiritual world. We live in the physical world. So they're able to see things that we don't see. They're able to warn us about things. And also, the work that we do also helps to give them light so they can further be able to assist us. So in traditional African culture, they used to build their houses on top of their deceased relatives. So they would just go into their front room, and that'd be the grave site. You know, Native American culture, they have burial grounds and burial mounds. You know, that's something that we don't have right now. Our dead are everywhere. You know, our relatives are buried with the Navy, buried with Masons, just buried with everybody's ancestors. And that's part of the reason why we don't have the power that we have. So that's one of the things that we need to do is work on getting our own burial grounds. You know, it doesn't cost nothing to get an acre of land. You know, you can get an acre of land in Chicago and Detroit for $1. And how many bodies can be buried on an acre of land? Just your own family. You know, they burying us inside of cement boxes. We filled with formaldehyde. We filled with all types of poisons, toxins. We're not feeding the earth because we are children of earth, so we should go back to the earth. And so that's also describing why there's a lot of chaos on the earth. Also why there's a lot of earthquakes and natural disasters, because we are not feeding the earth like we should. We just sitting in some boxes that's not going back into the earth. And so also to mention that ants are something that's sacred to Oya. When you see ants around, that shows the presence of Oya and also the presence of your egg. So in Africa, when we were just buried right in the dirt, and that dirt that they bury in is powerful because the essence of our bodies is in that. And there generally be ant hills on top of the ground where our ancestors were buried. And so ants are something that's sacred to Oya. So we don't really kill ants. You know, if you see them in your home, you know, you put like traps up or something. But as being people who are woke and aware of the culture, we don't kill them ourselves, you know. Now that you don't have to, try not to kill ants because of their sacredness to Oya. So some of the functions of our Egun, they act as guardians to advise us. They bless us. They take away Oshobos, which are sickness, death, accident, calamity, sadness, and all things that harm. They're here to protect us. They can warn us of pending dangers. They can also punish us. And they can also cleanse. And so our ancestors, they have the power to block anything. Before we deal with any spirit, we have to deal with our ancestors. First, you deal with your Ori, which is your higher self, the part of God that's in you. But even your Ori, you have the Ori of an ancestor that came before you. So we always have to venerate our ancestors because we'd be blocked from anything. You know, I've been in ceremonies where people were invoking deities, invoking spirits, invoking Orisha. And it was a battle between the Orisha and the ancestors because the Orisha cannot function properly in a person if they have not done the proper things to appease the ancestors. So we're talking about spiritual possession. I've seen a person, the Orisha was trying to come down and mount this person, and their ancestors were blocking the mountain. So they was like, you know, and it was like, Oya was trying to come down the mountain, but the ancestors was blocking it. So Oya came down and had this person sprinkling water all around the room, really trying to cool the energy because the ancestors wasn't being first. That's why before we do any ceremony, we always open up to the ancestors. So these are just more masquerades. This here is called an Isan or Opaiku. This is typically how you see the Egungun shrines in Nigeria. The Egungun vessel is called the Isan, which is typically made from the Iroko tree. in Nigeria, or the sepia tree in Cuba. So here we don't have those trees, so we used to use some of those things. We would use sticks from the willow tree because our ancestors are related to weeping willows. Our ancestors are connected to weeping willow trees on these shores. So these are called opaiku. This is also called opaiku, the ancestor staff or ancestor stick. This is mine. So this is a consecrated staff. And it has to be consecrated by a priest. So that means it's washed in the sacred herbs of the ancestor. It's fed the animal that the ancestor asked for, and it has 9 different color paws and various other medicines in it that makes it a source of power. So when I'm praying to my ancestors, we are calling on the ancestors. Even if you don't have a consecrated staff, you still should have a stick at your shrine as a door knocker when you're praying to your ancestors. So this is also called opaiku, but this is typically opaiku that we have in the New World, the ancestor staff. They don't really have the staffs in this way in Africa. These are their opaikus called isan. So that's another egun pot and the isan. And the reason why we have staffs and pots is so we can have a focalized way to appreciate and make offerings to our ancestors. The reason why you have a sticks, because you want to feed your ancestors, and use your ancestors to work in a different way. So that's the difference from also is initiated to a person who is just venerating the ancestors. A person who's initiated to a home or initiated to different things, they can work with their ancestors on different levels on behalf of other people. But to venerate your ancestors, you don't need to be initiated to nothing. Just to do the most basic ancestor veneration. That should be fine. That's typically how the shrines look in Africa, Nigeria. Now over here in the New World, this is called an agun shrine. Typically an agun shrine, they will start on the floor. You'll see it has an opaiku ancestor staff, it has flowers, it has candles. You generally have coffee there. You have food libations. Generally make a half a circle. That's generally in the corner somewhere with 9 lines to it. The lines represent sun rays. And also they're there to protect anything coming in. So in between those lines, we put X's and O's to consecrate that space because we only want things in our space that we call for. So that's typically how an ancestor shrine, an agun shrine looks in the New World. Or you have the Boveda style. Now, Boveda is when you typically have 9 glasses of water, and it's based off of spiritualism. And so each glass of water represents a different spiritual guide. You see, they typically have rows and cross there because that's how our ancestors relate to us. As I said, the ancestral practice in the New World was derived from spiritualism. And spiritualism is something that's very important for us. It's a piece that we're missing. So what I noticed, like people who have a strong connection to their ancestors, even if they practice Catholicism, like we have certain Hispanics that practice La Muerte or Spiritismo, they still have a relationship with the dead. They still acknowledge their dead. So they still have grandmothers and great grandmothers that they give the messages. They very much understand mediumship and spiritual possession. So I found it like my observation. It's a little easier for people of Hispanic background or African background to practice spiritualism than African Americans because a lot of my ancestors are very uncomfortable with this tradition. So this is where we come to them, using some Christian prayers or some gospel songs to come to them in a way that they relate to. So this style is called Oveda. This is how people set up and they work to do medium work, be a spiritual medium or what's called spiritualist. People who can possess ancestral spirits and receive messages. So I would say in the new world, the new age, we all should have 7 to 9 glasses of water. We all should have a cross at our altar, or a Bible, or something that our ancestors in these times should relate to. This is another Egungun. But you can tell this is probably the person who got initiated to Egungun in the West. You can tell this is more like this in Africa. That's the Egungun masquerade the person has. This is called a teha, which is typically a way that's given in E5, the Luke system, the Cuban system. That's based on the blue style. That's a plate which has the various ordeals that represent ancestors. Some of the other Odus, other than Okaran Odu that represent the ancestors, are Otuapan Meiji, Ogbe Osa, Iwori Oyeku, and Obara Osa, and Iwori Osa. All of those talk about the dead, transmigration of the soul. Iwori Oyeku talks about basking according to the fall. So some of the things that we want to commemorate our ancestors with, we offer them water, flowers, candles, soul food, traditional things that they ate. You know, I know when I'm making stuff for my ancestors, they want you to make it how they made it. Like if my grandmother wants some greens, she don't want them as some greens. She wants you to make the greens how she made them, how she made it. And if you can't do it properly, then you need to find somebody that can or get some help. And so we have to know our relatives and we know the things that they like. We continue to venerate them with the things that they like. We don't try to force our ways like customs on them. I'm a vegetarian, and I used to feed my ancestors everything I was eating. I would say, well, I got diabetes in my family, so I'm not giving my ancestors this. My grandfather died of lung cancer. I'm not giving him. We had alcoholism in my family. I'm not giving my ancestors no alcohol. And it was also causing havoc in my life. So I got a reading from Babalawo. The priest, he didn't know that I was a vegan. But he knew after the reading, he said, you're not feeding your ancestors the right food. They don't like the food that you feed them. You need to feed them something they want. So that's when I got to ask my ancestors what they want. So now I got a fried chicken for them, make pork chops or whatever it is they want, I give it to them. If your grandmother was here and she likes cigarettes, that's what she's going to respond to, because we are helping them to slow their vibration down so they can be able to have access to us in the physical. As you can see that the ancestors are moving at a very fast pace, like a gas. And the more the vibration slows, that's when you start to see things. Just like if a fan is moving fast, you can't see the fan, but once it slows down, you can see that it's three things protruding and rotating. Liquid, solid, gas. So the ancestors are moving at a very fast pace. We give them things that remind them of the times when they was on Earth, so they can come to the Earth and have more access to helping us in life. Everything is pretty good.
The hour went up and it started.
I don't know. Safe driving mode. What? Hey, y'all with me? Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, because it said that my video stopped or something. So it's still going?
Yeah, it's still going, and we can see you. It looks really good, and it sounds good.
Okay. So yeah, we offer pork rinds for ancestors. We offer palm oil. We offer candles. We offer corn liquor, what they call hooch, whiskey, tobacco products of all kinds, chewing tobacco, smoking tobacco, flowers, water, and fruit. That's one thing too. All spirits, all ancestors, you can always offer fruit also, which fruit is mostly like 95% water itself. So there are various different ways that our ancestors communicate with us, right? So some people think that a psychic or a person who's a medium, that an ancestor has to be talking to them like I'm talking to you. But everybody don't even have those capabilities to tap into the ancestors that way, and it's not meant for everybody to tap into the ancestors that way. Some people are more logical, and some people are more intuitive. So our ancestors communicate. Some people can actually hear ancestors talking just like I'm talking to you. Some people can see them. Some people feel chills in the back of their neck. Some people get goosebumps. Some people's hair stand up. Some people get gut feelings. Some people have dreams and visions, and some people see numbers and other signs and symbols. And sometimes the ancestors come and talk through babies, and talk to children, and talk to random people around us. You know, my ancestors come and talk to my daughter all the time. I'm gonna share with y'all the video where my grandmother actually possessed my daughter. So there's no limited way. There's no limit to the limited way to say that our ancestors ain't talking to us. Or you have a person say, I've been sitting in my altar and I've been praying to my ancestors. They don't show me no signs. Our ancestors are always trying to fight to give us messages and signs. We just are not tuned in enough to listen. We just are not still enough to listen, you know. And we know what's the best offering that you can offer your ancestors? The first and foremost offering. What'd you say?
Oh, time.
Time, that's right. Time is the best offering and the first offering that we can offer our ancestors. Yeah, time. That's what they want, our time and our space. When we first set up our ancestor altar, we have to dedicate time to sit down. We'd be so excited to have our altars looking like this elaborate thing that you know, the way it looks on the internet. We want to have everything on there. We have ancestor money. We get the white table. We get all these pictures. We get all this stuff on the ancestor altar. And we just be so excited to instantly set up our altar and just put everything on. My altar was built up a certain way. First thing I did was I made a circle and made the space for my altar. Then I just sat with my altar every day. So everybody who's present, I'm gonna send them the email of a way to set up an ancestor shrine if you choose to do it in this way. In this way, when you set it up in this proper way, the ancestors are seated more and your connection is just a little stronger. Because you first consecrate the space and then you just give them time. So then I would sit with that space every day for 10 to 15 minutes for 8 weeks, 2 months straight. And I'm just offering them time. And it's very important that we be consistent with our ancestors and the time that we give them. If I'm coming to my ancestors at Monday at 4 o'clock, we want to stick Monday at 4 o'clock because they always are trying to get messages to us. We could be on a bus, we could be in school, we so consumed with everything else in life that we're not paying attention to our egg rooms. And so once we create that time and space, every Monday at 4 o'clock, now the ancestors that's been waiting to get messages to you, they're going to meet you there because, okay, now she's open to receiving what it is we're trying to say. Now she's meditating, she's open to receiving, so now we're going to give her impressions. We're going to give you thoughts, we're going to give you things to try to communicate with. And you might be sitting at your altar, a CD might fall off of the TV. You pick up the CD, the title of the CD was a message for you, or your ancestors might want to play that music. You pick that CD up, it might have been your grandmother's favorite song on that CD. So she might just want you to play that music. You know, how do we notice when we are not acknowledging our ancestors? Because stuff will start, little funny stuff will start happening in our life. Not major things, but like missing stuff, missing keys, stuff. When you lose something and you look in the same place, if I lose this cap right here, and I know the cap was right here, now it's lost. I've been looking in the same place 5 times, didn't see the cap. You know, then I come and lose something else, and I'm looking for that. I find the cap in the place I already looked at. That's nothing but ancestors. Or it can be Eshu also. Because he can be tricky sometimes, but most of the time it's ancestors. You know, when I deal with a lot of mediums that people can see, so I had somebody came over and said, I got an ancestor that just walk around my house and be cleaning up stuff, but they really be disorganizing stuff. And she don't mean no harm, but she just be coming around, dusting and moving stuff and putting stuff away, and I be losing stuff, but I can't find it. So then you got to sit at your altar and pay attention to see if an ancestor has a message for you. So it's very important that we don't just do things quick. Very important that we have some type of means to communicate with our ancestors. So here, these are coconut shells. And so these coconut shells I have consecrated, and I use them all the time, but a lot of times people use fresh coconut, or they use something called kola nut, which is red kola nut, and that's typically how they use it in Africa. They start using coconut shells, which we call OB, in the New World, because they didn't have access to OB kola nut, which is the red kola, which they break into 4 lobes, use that to read with. Because once you set up your altar, once you spend time and space, my ancestor altar started on the floor, started with time and space, and then I started to bring different offerings to the ancestors. Just general things. Then I started to ask them questions. What do they want? You know, once you come to your ancestors, you wanted to start bombarding them with silly questions and things that you can answer yourself. You know, somebody would ask the ancestors, is some celebrity gay? Or, you know, the silly stuff. You don't want to ask the spirits silly questions that's no relevance to your life, that can't help you in your life. And you don't want to just instantly set up your ancestor altar. And I teach you how to throw coconuts, and teach you how to read OB shells. You should start asking all type of crazy questions to your ancestors. You start asking them this everything about your life. Your ancestors already know what you need. You know, am I gonna get this house? Am I gonna get this job? Should I do this? Should I do that? Once you just get into the habit of giving the ancestors what they need, and just saying general prayers, bring blessings in my life, bring abundance in my life, remove all the negative people, bring positive people, reveal my enemies to them, deal with small problems before they become large problems. You just pray for general things like that and ask the ancestors what they need. You need anything, what y'all need. As long as you feed them, the ancestors are already going to take care of the things in your life. I find myself, I don't have to even really pray for things directly. Somebody do some harm against me, I don't really have to pray directly, you know. I can just say, you know, can y'all take care of my enemies for me? No. And you will start seeing the things happen in a person's life that serve me some type of injustice. So I don't have to, you don't really have to act directly if you're always in the habit of serving ancestors. So I'm going to read some Odus from the 16 major Odu Ifa that this talks about reverence to our elders. Iwari Meiji says, if a young person shows deference to an elder, everything he attempts to do will turn out exactly right. and he would be extremely serene of character. This was the teaching of Ifafa, the young person of gentle character, who did not disrespect his mother or father, and whose life was exceedingly pleasant. Osa Meiji, which is the Odu of Oya, the mother of nine, who is the mother of Egungun. Also, they say Oya is the guardian of the cemetery. Also, when Egungun dance and they masquerade, and you can feel the wind from when they spin it, they're saying that that's also the winds of Oya. But this Odu says the hand of a child cannot reach the high shelf, and the hand of the elder is too large to enter the mouth of the Lord. The work that the child humbly asks the elder to do, the elder should not refuse to do. All of us have work to do for each other. This also speaks to the relationship between the young and the old. There's a very good book called From Water to Spirit, written by Patrice Malidoma-Somé. And in his book, Patrice Malidoma talks about his journey and how he get initiated, and how the old ways was dying off and the new ways was coming in. But it really has there's a good stories in that talks about the relationship between the young and the old. Because the babies are just coming from the spiritual world with messages, and the old are on their way to the spiritual world. Also, the young provide a sense of vitality and a sense of duty for the elders. Nowadays, though, we don't, in America, our elders now, they still want to party and kick it. They ain't trying to babysit. They ain't trying to babysit and have a relationship with the youth, with the grandchildren like it was back in the day. But that also can explain why some of our youth are coming up the way that they do. It's very important for us to venerate and work with our ancestors and elevate our ancestors. Just like I said, our elevated ancestors are who we call them, our ego. Then you have our ancestors that may be in between living a bad life and a good life. They were just regular people, but they may have died young. All these ancestors still need light too. And you got Uncle Ray that used to sell drugs, used to pimp. You don't want to call him to your Agun, because your Aguns are your hierarchy of ancestors, dating back to the original man or woman in your family. So they rest in heaven. They dwell up heaven. They're the gods of our family. They give us the guidance that help us in our everyday lives. They give us the wisdom. Now you'll want to talk to somebody that say, what's that nigga upside his head? Go get the gun. You get ancestors telling you to do that because they're not elevating themselves. So you got to be very careful when you're talking about an ancestor or a deceased relative. But some of those ancestors still can be useful. If I have a car problem, my uncle Ray was a good mechanic, even if he's a bad person, I can still invoke him and still appease to him, so he can help me learn how to fix his car. But you have to use them in a certain type of way. And some of the ancestors, they are hanging around other family members anyway, so we can try to say, well, I'm not calling this ancestor to my altar, but they will be showing up causing mischief until you give them some light and help them to get on a certain level so where they can give higher guidance. This is an 8-room pipe. Teha. This is something that also comes from the Lutheran Cuban system. Teha is a roof tile, like I said, with a certain OU or represents 8-room ancestors. And it still has sticks, but the sticks aren't in a bundle like you see in traditional Nigerian Isan. It still has sticks inside of the pot. These pots are made in the way that we work. So any culture that you see with masks, walking on stilts, dancing, it's all over the world. they practice Egungun. The spirit of Egungun is not just a Nigerian thing. That's just the way that we practice. But Egungun is everywhere, no matter what race you are, no matter what your belief system is. Egungun is everywhere. It's beyond. Egungun can stop anything. They can stop witches. Egungun is very powerful. It can stop everything. Like I said, we're talking about the spirit of the original man, and the original man and the original woman up until now. The original people in our lineage is the Eguns of our family. So these are pictures of ancestral quilts. Ancestral quilts are something that our ancestors used in slavery, like during the Underground Railroad, to transfer messages. And you can also make your own quilt. You can take different pieces of fabric cloth from various ancestors and put together our own quilt. It's something that we can keep as a keepsake. It also holds the ashe and power of our ancestors. But these are some of the remnants that we have that come from Egungun worship, where people had the sacred cloths. These are just a few of them. And it's something that a lot of people don't have. A lot of people don't get into this culture because it's expensive. It's expensive to get initiated to Orisha. It can be anywhere in the range of $5,000 to $25,000. I've heard people pay. But with ancestral veneration, it's free. Anybody can worship their ancestors in the most basic sense. You want to get initiated to different societies like such as Google, the ancestral veneration, it's free. You can tap into your ancestral power, pray to your ancestors, you can offer them things, and they can do everything that they're reaching. So in some cases, we don't need to get initiated. Some people don't need to get it, it's not their path. Some people just worship ancestors as their religion. Some people, that's it. All they do is ancestors. Some people also do a ritual or demons. But you cannot worship deities without acknowledging the progenitors first. So now we're going to move, and I'm going to set up an altar to show you how I can be more mindful.
Oh, you need me to move it down yet? Not yet. Okay, we see perfectly. And we see the ground.
Okay. So this is something that's called Efun. So Efun is native chalk. Efun is made from fossilized snail shells. In the New World, we use cascarilla, which is made from crushed eggshells. And that was as a substitute because they didn't have the fossilized fossilized snail shell, Efun. And snail is something that's also sacred to the spirit of life. And so we always want to make sure that we seal ourselves. That's to protect from unwanted spirits from coming into our space. And so you want to put some on your on your third eye, take it to the back of where your neck, your head meet. That's called, that should be my quote, but basically your ori. And so we also we can put that foam in our navel, put that foam on the bottom of our feet. We can use that foam in various ways. We are going to different places for protection. And so, first thing you want to do is clean your space out. So this is Florida water. People use Florida water for everything, but especially in local leaf system, Florida water is really used to pull egg glue. So I only use Florida water for egg glue. When I'm washing myself for other things, washing my sacred items, I don't use Florida water at all. I don't take spiritual baths with Florida water unless I'm doing something for ancestors. But I make Omira, Omire out of certain plants. So I just get in the habit of particularly using Florida water for egg glue. Florida water is a cologne. It's chemicals, you know, but you can make your own Florida water. Florida water works though because so many people have used Florida water for so long in this tradition. So it's also pulling down the ancestors of those Africans who initially came to the various parts of South America and various parts of the world and continued the traditions. And they use Florida water. So we invoking something special to us also when we use Florida water. But you can mix Florida water with white flower petals and put some castor oil or some effluent inside of the water. You make a bowl and you dip your fingers in the bowl and you wipe yourself down like this. Wipe yourself off, cleansing your aura off from any outside energy. You also take that same. First, you clean your space off. All right, so yeah, first you clean the space off with any like chemicals or something like that. If you need bleach or anything, first you clean the space off in that way, make sure the space is clean. Then you would take your wash, your white wash with the flower petals and Florida water and whatnot, and you would wipe down space, sweeping away, but you don't go back and forth once you get to that point. You're sweeping away, wiping things down, sweeping things away with the wash, your towel or whatever, and you know you have your towel and your wash, and wiping it away. Then you want to make a counterclockwise circle. So we typically do it in the corner. You make a counterclockwise circle, starting on the floor and starting off the wall. Once you start making your circle, you never take the chalk until you're done making a circle. From here. So you got a circle. Then you're gonna put the 9 lines in there. Because remember, the number of ancestors is 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So then you fill in the gaps. Because what this is doing is consecrating the energy. The only thing that's gonna come in the circle is what I call it. Anything I don't call is not coming to the space. So you fill over the X's and O's. Or you don't have to, you can actually just make more lines if you want to. But basically you don't want no gaps in space. Because you want to seal the space off. The reason why we put them on us is also to seal us and protect unwanted things from attaching to us and sticking to us. So then you would bring water. candles. And your ancestor staff. You know, if you have a staff. You can just start off with just water, candles, alcohol, and yourself. And really, just water. Really, if you don't got nothing else but water, just water and yourself. You can spend 10 minutes at this space every day. And you'll keep a notebook with you to jot down any messages or any impressions that you give at the time. It might, like I said, it might be a smell, it might be a vision in your head. And so now we're going to say some prayers, which is an invocation. So when we invoke, it's not the same as invoking is like calling forth to embody something. So you can be filled with the energy and the power of what it is that you invoke. So we say invocations by Egun, we are invoking the spirit of our Egun so they can be present. So, you know, say Egun, Kiki Egun, Egun, Rama, Feo, O, Kiki, Oda Sabakun, Egun, Egun, Batabango, Egun, 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 Kiki, Egun, Rama, Feo, Ko Pipi, Oda Sabakun, Egun, Batabango, Egun, Yaba Faturi, Nale, Egun, Ashe. So we don't have to worry if we cannot speak foreign languages properly because our ancestors don't respond in the language that we speak. We speak English. So I always say my prayers in English and in Europe. One of my elders told me that it's important to say our prayers in Yoruba or whatever system that we are practicing, say it in the ancient tongue because we are calling forth something old to come with us and be present when we are saying things in the native tongue. But another one of my elders told me to say things in English because that's where you feel the most comfortable at. That's where you feel you have the most power at. And if you do not know the native language of what it is you're trying to say.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, if you don't know the language of what it is that you're speaking, and you're pronouncing it wrong anyway, you don't know what you're saying. And you can be saying something disrespectful or offensive when you think you're saying something good. But Obara Mati says, he who knows does not die like he who does not know. And he who does not know does not die like he who knows. So that's something that can give us an excuse to not suffer the repercussions from things that we don't know. And we don't do it properly. And so you be knocking with a stick. Even if your stick is not consecrated, you should have a stick on top. But even if you get some type of bell or rattle, some way that you call an ancestor. So I said, pray to the mediums of the ancestors. Ancestors who have preserved the mystery of featherless flight. You create the words of reverence and power. The drums of the ancestors announce the arrival of the ancestors. On the strong mat, you spread your power. The ancestors are here. May it be so. You would call all the names of your mothers and fathers. You're going to say, Ibashe. Remember the words that we spoke earlier? You would say, Ibashe. Cynthia Beatty, Ibashe. Henry Brown, Ibashe. Ibashe. Frank Johnson, Ibashe. Nathaniel Johnson. So on and so on. After you say their name, you say Ibada Bada Turon. Ibashe, Henry Brown, Iba Ada Turon, Ibada Bada Turon. Right? So you remember what that's saying. We pay homage to so and so, and may you rest in peace. So that's what you say when you invoke your ancestors. Not, you can say Ashe at the end of that, but you don't say Henry Brown, Ashe. Stella Johnson, Ashe. You say Iba Ashe. I pay homage to Mojuba. We give reverence to. So If you don't know the names of your ancestors, that's why you say a general prayer. You say, we pay homage to all of our mothers and fathers, those we know and those we do not know, those who are souls that we do not know. All of our ancestors who died on these shores, all of our ancestors who died in Africa, all of our ancestors who died abroad. And I say, Ibashe Ayandan Wedo and Ibashe Dambala Wedo. Dambala Wedo and Ayandan Wedo are one and the same spirit. It's the spirit of the snake, it's also a voodoo spirit. But Dambala Wedo and Ayandan Wedo is the female aspect of Dambala Wedo. Dambala Wedo embodies the collective spirit of all the ancestors of the whole African race. So when I say Ibashe Dambala Wedo, we're talking about the ancestors of the whole African race. I say all my mothers and fathers, those known and unknown, those I know, those I do not know. Those who are so old that we do not remember. All of our ancestors who died on these shores, all of our ancestors who died in Africa, all of our ancestors who died in the waters, and all of our ancestors who died abroad. It means everywhere. Ibashe Ayandan Wedo, Ibashe Dambala Wedo. And therefore I covered everything. I call for everybody. But after you have said your prayers and your invocation, you invoke the spirit, and now you're going to make your offering, which will come a little later, you know. But you will say your prayer first, and then you make an offering. You will pray for what you want. This is the same format that you follow with an Orisha or any spirit. You're gonna pray for what you want. You can kneel or salute. You know, I typically salute like this. I'll say my prayers for what I want. And after I pray, then I will offer gin or fruit or whatever it is I'm gonna offer. Because it's saying, this is what I'm asking for, and here, this is my gift of what I'm giving to you. But for starters, you ain't doing nothing. You just saying general prayers, and you just sitting and you meditate, invoking the spirit of your ancestors. Even if you were adopted, some of your adopted parents, they family members, they also become your ancestors too. Anybody that cared for you, loved you, it could be a neighbor that babysits you. They become part of your ego. They become part of your ancestors. Sometimes when we are adopted into families, these are people who are part of our heavenly family, our ekbe. And so we may not be blood relatives to them, but we are connected in the heaven world, so we end up with this family that's part of our same ekbe anyway. And so also, when we say Agons, we're talking about people who fought for our liberation as our Agons. Like I said, people who you look up to, people who you value, people who you learn things from, who don't necessarily have to be blood.
Trying to get on the freeway. I don't want to get on the freeway.
If you don't know your ancestors, like I said, it does not matter. You had a bad relationship with one of your ancestors. Person say, well, I never knew my father. I ain't like that grandma, but she used to beat me when I was young, and my family never take me over there. But a lot of times, we get caught into worldly things and we don't understand that these ancestors have to break their wrongs and they did on earth. They can see things like that. They still have to do that. Father didn't take care of his child on the earth in order for him to get to the next level. In the spiritual world, he's going to have to help out and assist his child and make sure she's good and make sure she's well before he can elevate. So that may take 30, 40, 50 years before a child can get to something a higher dimension. Like I said, some of our ancestors, they got into our original home. They're not in our, they're not in the part. Some people are still in the same place they are when they die. Some people are what they call purgatory. Some people are still waiting in the church, waiting in the cemetery, waiting for Jesus to come. This is why we need to work to get things ancestors. They can elevate to another level. They can also help us. We can also have other reincarnations. You watch old Chinese movies, you watch old school movies, you see how people really avenge their family's death, avenge their family's name. We don't have no honor. We don't care our actions. How people we have lived 16 generations. So if I'm doing all this stuff right now, I'm building a palace, I'm buying land, I'm building a kingdom. Part of that is so when I come back here, I can have a kingdom leave me. You know? So you see like old Chinese when you say you disrespected my father, you know what I'm saying, and I'm gonna fight you to the death to restore my family legacy. And it was very important, you know, like where's that importance in our culture? And so when we deal with ancestors over here, this has became our ancestral practice. We don't deal with them in an ego. We deal with them a synchronized way, which is kind of derived from spiritualism and traditional Native American practices, also with some of the African practices from various cultures. So when we have an ancestor ceremony, we sing songs to our ancestors. We may make some of their favorite dishes, make some of their favorite dishes. We tell stories about that same ancestor. We play some of their favorite songs. We share stories, we laugh and joke. We share the food that we prepare for them. When we prepare food for our ancestors, and we share some of that food with them, it's no longer becoming the food. So even though I don't eat meat, when I do certain ceremonies, I prepare food for my ancestors, and I will have some of that meat, because then it becomes an act, it becomes a blessing, because I'm eating my ancestors. So it's no longer a piece of pork. You know, that's not what it is. It's a blessing that I need. Anything that we offer during ceremony, and then we share in communion with that food, we are sharing with the ancestors. And we are having a blessing. Anytime we all come together as a collective, all of our ancestors are coming together. And they commune too. Everybody is virtual, everybody's in the room, all of our ancestors are coming together right now. And they communicate with each other. And you know, they're happy at the things that we're doing. And so here we have something called misas. So a misa is a spiritual mass that came from the Catholic Church called mass. So they call it a misa. That's typically done by a medium or a spiritualist. This is typically what they call spiritualism or spiritism. And it was started in the 1800s by a man named Alex Kardec. But you know, he got some of those practices from various different cultures, from gypsies, Africans, Moors, and things that they left behind from traveling. That's where they started getting the seances and spiritualism from. So we have, you know, what they call a misa. And that's when the person comes and they work their boveda, they work their table with the 9 glasses of water, and they say various prayers. Most of it is Christian prayers. Most of it is done in Spanish because that's when it started. And this person typically can possess an ancestor, so their ancestor might come to them and possess them, and or one of the spiritual guys don't necessarily have to be an ancestor. They can be a guide. Like I have one of my guys is a white Catholic priest that rolled with me. Just because of some of my work that I do, like a minister work, pastor work. But that's one of my guys. He's not my ancestor, but that's a guide. And so a lot of times too, when people are doing like these past life regressions, they're not even tapping into your life, they tapping into the life of their guide. Because from our traditions, we have some of the older traditions, we don't take on the auspices that you can reincarnate in another race. If I'm African, I'm gonna reincarnate in my own lineage. And the Chinese person feel the same, the Japanese person feel the same, the Native American person feel the same. It's only us in the new age that kind of be like, yeah, I was somebody told me, this white dude told me he was a Japanese warlord. And he looked up the warlord and showed me, like, yeah, this is right now. This resonated with me. I used the pendulum, and this is who I said I was. And I'm like, I bet their family don't believe that, you know. Like, we reincarnate in our own family, in our own bloodline. So, it's important to ask the ancestors questions. We ask them, is everything fine? We ask them, do they want anything? You know, so that's really when I go to my ancestors, I pray and hold them. And the first thing I ask them is everything fine. That's Bawa Loto Re. Yeah, that's a dark sand that came up. Sprinkle some water on that. Okay. Some kind of egg. Then you ask them, is everything cool, everything not cool? Then you start to ascertain what's wrong. Y'all need anything you need? A lot. Yes. So right now I'm only gonna ask if they need something that I have, you know, because they might need something that I don't have. So I'm not gonna, you know, say that you want some KFC chicken and I don't get that. All I really have is alcohol, palm oil, and water. I only have palm oil, F1 and water. So like I say, I have a camel too. Okay, do you need any more OT? Which is alcohol? No. You need only tutu? Which is cool. The candle. Yes, I need candle. So somebody can go get a lighter. Anybody got a lighter? I got one in the car. Oh, so give them some light. Give them what they want. Then you would say, is there anything else you need? When you ask, can you close out after you gave them what they need, you ask, can you close? May I close? Yes. Say we can close. So after you gave the ancestors what you need, I mean what they need and what they want, then you can go and proceed and start asking them what you want. After you just checked in, all you said was everything fine? They said no. Then you say anything you want? Yeah. Then you go down the list of offerings that you give to the ancestors. You want some of this, you want some of that. If you do some of your relatives, you start asking things that they like. You want peanut brittle, you want Snickers, you want some peppermints, you want a Diet Coke, because you never know who's speaking. Also, when you start getting to deeper levels of your ancestor veneration, you want to start, you want to ask who is the spokesperson of your ancestors. So the spokesperson of my ancestors, that means that she's generally the one that is speaking on behalf of the rest of the ancestors. Is Irene Benita Hawkins, which is my father's mother's mother. She speaks on behalf of everybody else. Then you can start to ask them, who do you want to bring to the altar? Should I bring this person's picture to the altar? Some people ain't comfortable with coming to your altar and you don't want their space in there because it can cause, you don't want them in your space because it can cause confusion. And so you already know that you're dealing with this particular spokesperson and you know this person's personality is somebody that you happen to meet in real life. If you happen to be lucky enough to lucky enough to have relationships with both of you, with your grandparents or the elder people in your family, you want to ask them as many questions as you can about your ancestors. Like I have detailed lists of that I happen to get. All my grandparents are deceased right now, but I was able to get a lot of information from my grandma. I had contact with all 4 of my grandparents before they died. So I was able to find out as much information from my grandparents as I could. I'm asking them like questions like, what was your mother's favorite color? What type of hobbies did she have? What was her favorite music that she played? What kind of person was she? What was her favorite food? What was her mother's favorite food? You know, then once you start to find out these details about your ancestors, you start to find out things about your life. You start to find out, okay, well then, this is why I like spaghetti so much. Because my great-great-grandfather, his favorite dish was spaghetti. He was in the South, but he didn't like, he was in the South, but he didn't like just straight country cooking. He liked more gourmet cooking. This is why my grandma was such a good cook. And she didn't just cook just straight soul food. She could cook anything on a very quality level. So, and I found out a lot of stuff, you know. This person like arts and crafts. They make dandelion wine. They make tea cakes, bread rolls, fresh biscuits, love pork chops. This person didn't eat pork. This person smoked a pipe. I got an ancestor that lived to be 135 years old. This person practiced hoodoo. So once you start to find out these different things about your ancestors, it brings a sense of pride where you start to know, well, this is why I'm the way that I am. This is where I get these things from. You know, everywhere in our body, our ancestors are still interacting. You know, we still have traits on our bodies from our ancestors from 1,000 years ago. You may have your 1,000-year-old ancestor nose. I might get this nose from somebody from 1,000 years ago. Our parents and are still interacting inside of us genetically. That's how close our ancestors are. So you want to find out as much detail as you can because this is where the ancestor magic is. This is how we use the magic. This is, you know, I got my Uncle Ray Ray. He was the most elevated, but I'm having some problems with some street people, so they might need to deal with. He might need to. I might ask him to deal with it that way. I might give him something that he like. You know, I know he like my grandmama's oxtail, so I can't make oxtail, so I'm gonna go to my sister, my mama's house. Can you make these oxtails? And I'm gonna come boom, take these oxtails. Uncle Ray Ray, can you handle this? You know, I don't live that life no more, but I know you was about that life, and you take care of that, and it's gonna get taken care of. So this is how we tap into our ancestral magic, tap into our ancestral power. And this is how we utilize them by finding out details about them. But even if we don't know the details, if we just give them what they want and make general offerings, they always gonna take care of us. So I want to read a few things. This is a very good book right here. It's called The Fundamentals of Yoruba Religion by Chief Fong. It's a hard book to find, so I think it's out of print. But I just want to read this one prayer, because we are we have been separated from our source, so a lot of things that we're not capable of doing. So when we say certain prayers, like the Odu Ifa, like I said, Obara Meji. Obara Meji says, he who does not know does not die like he who does know. And he who does know does not die like he who does not know. So when you're doing ritual work, saying that prayer can excuse you from suffering repercussions if you do something wrong. And so this is a verse from Otur Meji. It says, it is now a pitiful plight. Iyere, Ifa is now a dirge, which is a song like Ifa chant. When eyes are two, they watch events unfold. When legs are two, they walk fast. The rumps, the buttocks are two, they sit on a mat. One hand does not jingle. Also, one leg will not walk very fast. How can one refuse to answer a call from responsible people? I am asked to kneel and greet those before me. I knelt and greeted those before me. I am asked to kneel and call on those behind. I knelt and called on those behind me. They ask, who are those before one? I answered, one's paternal ancestors are those before me. They ask, who are those behind? I answered, it is the Orisha and one's paternal household that are behind one. When the Lapa Dende builds its nest, the Lapa Dende is an Ethiopian swallowbird. The nest does not touch the sea nor heaven. It is suspended in the sky. Looking at God in heaven, looking at human beings on earth. Atanjiri, divine for Odushola, the child of Ranashe, whose father died when he was a little child, without the knowledge of how to cast Ifa, without the knowledge of how to print the Odu, not having been to Ile Ife to witness the Ifa festival. Ile Ife is like the Mecca of traditional Yoruba practitioners. Ile Ife is considered to be like one of the first places where the earth solidified when it was coming out of a hardened, a molten lava state. One of the first places where there was solid land at was what they call Ile Ife. And also the place where they say all the deities came from heaven to earth in Ile Ife. And the ruler of Ile Ife is called the Oni of Ife, which is always an Oni, and the Oni of Ife is considered an Orisha on earth. So there's currently an Oni of Ife right now. And so it said that, even if you are in a new world, it's always something that we should take a journey, like the Muslims of Mecca. We should all go to Ile Ife one day and witness Ifa festival. Or go to Oshun State and witness the Oshun festival. So it says, without the knowledge of how to print the Odu and not having been to Ile Ife to witness the Ifa festival. When all ritual elements were assembled for Odushola to start propitiating, he broke into tears, saying he did not know if water is to be offered first. Heavenly spirits, descend to make this ritual successful, heavenly spirits. Whether it is jinn that should be offered first, I do not know. Heavenly spirits, descend to make this ritual a success for me, heavenly spirits. Whether it is OB, cola nuts, that have to be offered first, I do not know. Heavenly spirits, descend to make this ritual a success for me, heavenly spirits. One may also mention other ritual elements that are provided at this time for prayer. So this can be chanted when you're performing any family tradition, or when any important spiritual rite is performed, you don't know how to do it properly. If I might host the Kwanzaa this year for my family, and I participate in the Kwanzaa ceremonies, but I never fully hosted it myself. So I would say that prayer, so I won't do nothing wrong. Kwanzaa was very important to my grandmother who's deceased. So we just continue Kwanzaa for her. And it's also important for us too as Africans in America to have some practice of our own. We have to realize as Africans in America that we are not Africans, even though that's in our descent nature. We are not Cubans. But some of us get into the tradition. We are not Ghanaians. We are not anything but what we are. We're not Haitians. So we practice voodoo. We have to practice voodoo with our own African American flair. We practice Akan. We have to practice it in our own African American way. We practice traditional Isheshe or Lukumi. We have to practice it in our own way. We can't practice traditions in the same way that everyone else practices it in their own culture, because we have our own culture, and our culture is important too. So when I sing songs to the ancestors, I sing a few African songs. I sing some Lukumi songs. I really like the way the Luther songs flow. And I sing some African American modernized songs, and I also sing some gospel songs. So that way I know I'm dealing with it. We also have to realize that we have a little bit of some of everything in us. So some of the way that we synchronize our practices is just not going to be the same. If we dealing with ancestors in strictly Nigerian way, and so we dealing with ancestral spirits from Nigeria. So the ancestors somebody come possess somebody, they speak in Yoruba, and you get the message. Just like when somebody catch the Holy Ghost, they speak in tongues or they speak in the language because somebody needs to tell them, speak so we can understand you, or deliver that message. Deliver that message in a way in which we can understand. So that's why we we have calls for we sing gospel songs. Because we want our ancestors to speak in the language we can understand. If we want them to understand us too, that's why I say stuff in English. We have to really respect our own traditions as African. We have to respect the embodiment of the ancestral spirits and the embodiment of the Risha and manifest in the shores. Think about how many African American adventures there were. Think about how we influenced the world with hip hop, and everybody is looking to see what we doing over here. Once we start getting deep into our tradition, we inspire people in the homeland to get deeper into their traditions because they can start to throw that away for Christianity, Islam. But once there was a resurgence of traditional practices over here, we inspire people at home. A good example is Fela Kuti, famous Nigerian musician. He wasn't raised in Nigeria. He was raised in England, I believe, with a traditional European education. But after he got inspired by the revolutionary movements of the 60s, he got inspired by Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. He turned into African revolutionary, threw away Christianity, went back into traditionalism, got initiated to Shango, started his own party because he was inspired by the things he did. So a lot of us, we don't have no cultural identity, so we want to grasp onto something and identify with that. You ever see a black Muslim? He swear he an Arab. He's more of an Arab than an Arab. Anything that we do, we really invite them to be more of that than the people themselves. But we need to be more of ourselves. We want to practice Hinduism. We think that we're Indian. We think that we're Indian. We spend a lot of time honoring the ancestors of other people honor their ancestors. Somebody told me where they want to travel to. They want to go to Tibet. They want to go to Hawaii. They want to go everywhere and meet these gurus around the world, which is fine and dandy. But all you're doing is meeting people who are studying their own ancestors instead of studying your own ancestors. That's what we need to do more of, studying our own. And acknowledging the people on these shores who live great lives, who embody great things. Within the last 100 or so years, we got so many people that did so many things that can advance the world on these shores. So there's power here. We don't need to go nowhere else to access our power. The power is within us. We have the power here. It's good to go to these different places. Get some of the soil you bring back to where you at. So you can tap into the power. So you can have the power. But this is where it's at. So Kwanzaa or any other little thing that we do as African Americans is living. And what is our spiritual identity? What is the veneration and acknowledgement of our ancestors? Because we know Orisha are elevated ancestors. So people who live certain lives did great things, and they get venerated and elevated to become an ancestor. Become an Orisha. Same way in Catholicism, the saints. Catholic saints. These are people that lived some extraordinary life and they became saints. So now, you know, we got a lot of us at New Age. You know, we saying we guys, we got everything in us. You know. But in order to become a God, you have to have done something more. You have to have shown a level of mastery and done something self-sacrificial to elevate yourself to become on a God level. You have to master yourself. You're not just guys because we got everybody got God in them. Everybody got that. Everybody has the a higher self. But until you become one with your higher self, then you can become on a certain level. So what is this looking like to increase our spiritual connection, our spiritual practices with our own ancestors? Like we really need to start really venerating the ancestors in our family, first of all. If I know that my grandfather, Henry Brandy, he made so many sacrifices for his entire family. For his entire family. When he left, he could have been one of the early blacks in the NFL. But he went to the service so he could send money back home to Mississippi, take care of his younger sisters and brothers. You know, and left he had a scholarship in football. And he left that. Then he was a police officer, a post office worker, a DJ, and a security guard. And, you know, he had a lot of money. And so everybody, from his wife's family, his family, nephews, little cousins, grandkids, he made sure everybody was good. Anybody needed a place to stay, they came from down south and stayed with him throughout the years. And there's a lot of people that say, I don't know where I would be if it wasn't for your grandfather. My grandfather, he was a security guard in an all-Mexican neighborhood at a library. And when he got shot, there was so many Hispanics and Mexicans that came to the hospital and said that by him being a security guard at the library, it helped them get so many things. Like, and he was like a father figure. He was a father figure to so many people. You know? So that's somebody that should be acknowledged and venerated. You know, like when his birthday come around, we should be having festivals for him. You know, you should be having festivals for your grandmother who made something from nothing, who had 15 kids in one house and make sure everybody was full. You know, why is Oshun more important than her? Because you didn't know Oshun, but you knew your grandmama, you knew Big Mama, who was a living expression of Yemonja in order to have 15 kids in a 3-bedroom house and take care of everybody. Take care of her sister's children who had kids too young to train them as her own, or her child who had a child too young to train them as her own. Why aren't we elevating them and venerating them? You know, this is what we need to be focused on. You know, we need to have collective festivals for the people who fought for our liberation. You know, just like they have the Garvey Fest. So Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Ida B. Wells, Durham Truth, Harriet Tubman, Martin Delaney. The list goes on. We need to literally celebrate them and have festivals for them. When the people that fought for our liberation, African Americans, we need to, when these people's birthdays come, we need to get together collectively and do something, even if it's in your space. We need to do something to acknowledge that, because we have to increase the ancestor power that we have. Because I noticed, like I said, when we have the Mises and and I use different people for Mises. Before you get initiated, you should all have a spiritual match. You should have a Misa, where it's a medium that can identify all the spiritual guides on the picture. So a person can say, like I said, somebody said I got a Catholic priest with me. Somebody said I had like a person that looked like a pharaoh that walked with me. I got a chef that walked with me. Like I got all these different people that walk with you that help you along your path. And when you have a spiritual mass, you have a person to identify all the spirits that walk with you. But that's something that's done in spiritismo or spiritualism, typically associated with Santeria or Isa. Just like I said, when people have the Boveda and there's spiritistas, you know. which we don't have a lot of spiritualists. We have people who are spiritualists, but they don't know about evolution. This is what I'm trying to get my friend over here, Sister Marcia, to be my spiritista, because she's a good leader. So to be able to identify the spirits that are in a person's spirit support. So if something happens to you, sometimes when people start elevating, these spirits will come down on the person. And if you don't know what the spirit is, you don't know how to deal with it. Typically, the people who come from my ELA, we had one person, he had like over 12 different spirits that possess him. And each one of these spirits that come down, my godmother knows how to deal with these spirits and where they come. Because he had spirits that come down. One of them is a slave that got his tongue cut off. He talking like a person with his tongue cut off, but he's doing symbols and telling people to go get medicines and telling people to go get things for their healing. And he got another spirit that don't like white people. White person come down, white person in there, he grab a machete. He don't like white people. You know, you got another spirit that a person that get thrown off the boat and drowned. But you identifying people that's in your spiritual court. So it's very important that we have those spiritual masters for us individually, you know, and we start building up people to be able to practice spiritualism, to be able to communicate with spirit on a different level. Because like I said, we're not initiated into the Egungun code. Egungun, we don't have to be initiated into Egungun. We have a different way that we have dealt with spirit in the root world, and this is the way that spirit works for us. So it's very important that we develop our connection because some things are missing. What I found is doing those misas, when I use a person that's Puerto Rican, or Mexican, or Cuban, they can let their spirit come down on them and possess them very easily and have control over that. And then they can send the spirit on their way. I mean, they have a spiritual guide, one of these spiritual guides that come through them and speak to them as a medium. And there are some African Americans that can do that also. They're very good. But there's going to be more people of a Hispanic culture and background that can do it. Oh, that's African American, because they have a strong connection of their grandmother, grandfather, grandparents, aunts that practice spiritualism. Even if they were Christian, they still had a level of ancestral veneration and spiritualism that was missing from us. So it's going to be hard. It'd be harder for me to get possessed by a spirit or to communicate because I'm missing some generations. My grandmother and her mama, all of them was Christian. You know what I'm saying? So they be like, I ain't coming. You know, one of my ancestors came to me. She was dressed in all white, and she came to me and gave me some advice, some healing tips. She was a nurse. But she was like, I'm not dealing with your charms. Like, what else? You know, I was happy to see her. It's the first time she ever came to me. And she said, I'm not dealing with your charms, though. Because I was looking at her like, yeah, you going to talk to me about some of the stuff I'm into? And she was like, nah. She was like, nah, you're going to take this. I ain't dealing with your charms. That's all you getting. And she said back. And, you know, I was cool with that. But eventually, the more that we put ourselves in these ceremonies, put ourselves in these atmospheres and start elevating the collective energy of our ancestors, the more we will have a stronger connection. The more we will have a strong connection with the spirits and the Orisha and the Loas and whatever deities you work with. There's a reason why certain things happen over here, but it's not the way that it happens in Africa, or not the way that it happens even in Brazil or Haiti. There's a reason why certain magical things don't happen like that over here. And that's the reason why, because we don't deal with our ancestors and our spiritualism. We can't just go directly to the source and start tapping into this. And I got a shrine. I seen a person with an Osayin shrine in Nigeria that talk. The Osayins over here, they don't talk, they ain't talk. This thing talk. And people take certain medicine in their ears where they can actually hear what it's saying. But it sounds like, first I seen it on YouTube. Then I was talking to a different Nigerian on FaceTime, and he went in the back and he FaceTime and he had one that was talking. And this is stuff that we're not doing over here. My godmother told me she went to Nigeria and they went to a hole in the ground, moved the cloak off the hole, and then they started praying. and there was an Orisha that was a big chain, came out the ground, spinning. You know, it's people that see little people, gnomes, and what we know of like gnomes, Smurfs, little people, Azizan. You know, we don't have these experiences over here, and all this because that gap is missing. So this is one of the reasons why it's very important that we start stepping up our ancestral veneration, our ancestors. I'm gonna read something from one of the manuscripts of one of my elders of the spiritual world. His name is Baba Metahochi of BC7. He's the second African American who was initiated to Orisha on these shores. He's the first African American initiated to Ifa on these shores. But he left a lot of teachings. And so these are the 4 words that I'm going to close out with. He says, the ancestors who once lived in human society now live in the land of the spirits. If they had fulfilled certain conditions, a person's conduct in this world and the manner of his or her death determine his or her entry in the ranks of the reverend group of ancestors who form the backbone of our societies. For example, the kind of Ghana believe that to become an ancestor, you must have lived life worthy of emulation. An exemplary life, one must have lived to a ripe old age and had children in Yoruba society. A person who dies childless is not acknowledged as an ancestor. To become an ancestor, one must have died a good death. That is, one's death must have been due to accident. One's death must not have been due to accident, suicide, or any form of violence. However, exception may be made in cases of heroic deaths. In defense of society, one's death by such unclean diseases as lunacy, dropsy, leprosy, and epilepsy. Why are the ancestors to be revered? In conformity to West African culture, in which old age has a touch of venerability, the ancestors are respected because they are our elders and our predecessors who have trodden the path of life which we, living, are now treading. The ancestors enter into a spiritual state of existence. After death, they have their feet planted in both the world of the living and the world of the spirits. Therefore, they know more than the living and are consequently accorded great respect. It is also believed that the ancestors live very close to the Supreme Being. They act as friends at court to intervene between humans and the Supreme Being, who is considered as the oldest and greatest ancestor. The ancestral beliefs give concrete expression to the African idea of community. For us to be human being is to belong to a community, and to do so is to participate in the rituals, ceremonies, and other activities of the community. The ancestors form the supernatural part of the community in the world. Hence, this unseen part of the community is never left out in any community activity, and the participation is always sought after. So that's what we're saying. All of our ancestors are communing right now and happy with the things that we're doing. Everything that we do is for a community. It's not just for ourselves. You know, when we say witches jokingly, because a witch is a powerful woman, or Oso, a wizard, is a powerful man. But when you do things in isolation, do things just for yourself, that's a sign of a person who practices darkness, or practices evil, who don't want to do things for the collective of the community. Because everything in nature is community. Everything that we do is supposed to be for the benefit of the entire community. When we get back into those practices, you would have no people saying stuff like, I don't want nobody telling my child what to do, because it's a village, it's a community. We're not community anymore. Spirit does not die. If we continually make that religious and philosophical statement through ritual, if we remember, then the physically deceased members of the family continue to be a part of that family. We are assured of immortality. In order for the family to be healthy, its continuity and wholeness must be continually experienced. And it is through the ancestors that we keep in touch with our sacred origins. We must perform the ritual of ancestral communion daily, a ritual of spiritual union and communication. The continued spiritual existence of the physically deceased also manifests itself materially. Spirits of the ancestors take physical form in the new babies that are born to the community. Babies are therefore not new, but represent timeless regeneration of the human. The elders of the community do not die, but upon physical death are reborn into the spiritual realm as ancestors. It says, see this book called Let the Circle Be Unbroken by Donna Marimba Richards. Let the circle be unbroken. We do not worship our ancestral spirits, we commune. So ancestor worship is a wrong nomenclature for that which is no worship, but a manifestation of an unborn family relationship between the parent who has departed from this world and the offspring who are still here. See? So now we can open up questions. Y'all got any questions? I can turn your mics off. Ask away. Any questions?
Does it matter which side of my family that we try to, as far as our ancestors go, does it matter if we reach out to our brother or father?
No, but typically you should reach out to both of them. You say, I know all my mothers and fathers. Now it doesn't matter. If you feel more connected to a person, then you definitely should reach out to them because they're still connected. Use the favorite grandchild. You reach out to your grandma because she's gonna make sure that baby is okay. She's gonna make sure she puts you in tune with what you need to be put in tune. So it don't matter. It don't matter which one you do first, but we acknowledge them all.
Are you able to put that candle out whenever you like?
No, that's another thing. When you have candles out, when you light candles, you should not blow candles out. If you have to put a candle out, then you snuff it out. But a lot of us know, already. But no, I could leave that candle going. Questions?
Okay, so you know that we have our elevated ancestors and our ancestors that are not elevated. So is there a difference in the way that we can both them since some of them are not?
So, yeah, did y'all hear that question?
That's a great question.
Wow.
I was really about to bring that up. I couldn't believe my ears.
No, we didn't hear it. I didn't hear it.
You said you didn't hear it? You didn't hear it?
No, I didn't hear it.
Ask your question again.
Okay, we know that we have elevated ancestors and our ancestors that are not. Is there a difference in the way that we involve ancestors who are not elevated versus the ones that are?
Yeah, she said we have elevated and unelevated ancestors. And is there a difference in the way that we invoke? So in general, like the way that I just did the ancestor prayer invocation at my space, I'm dealing with my elevated ancestors, the hierarchy of my ancestors, right? And so when I'm dealing with, so that's like a collective thing, and you really can't deal with them the same way. If you deal with them in a way that they like, if you get Uncle Leroy that listens to Tupac, and he like oxtails and Hennessy, you know what I'm saying? You play some of that Tupac, you some oxtails, get some Hennessy, and ask him to go do that work for you. But you just not bringing him into the, you isolating him and speaking to him individually. You're not bringing him into the hierarchy of your ego, because the hierarchy of your ego is like talking to Orisha, it's like talking to God, it's talking to, you want somebody that's giving you the highest advice, give you the most wisest decisions to make the most sense. And that's somebody that's gonna say, bust that nigga upside of Because you get spirits that tell us to do that all the time. You know, stuff that tell us to handle things in a different way. That's not an elevated way. That's another different. But you deal with them in the same way, just as an individual, somebody that you know. You know, so but that's when you start getting into purposeful ancestor magic. You know, purposeful ancestor magic. Like I said, initially, all you're doing is praying to your ancestors and just speaking in general, making sure they have everything that they want. And I'm just praying in general. You know, I want to pray for, you know, protect my home, protect my family. I create sacred space around me this day. I want to ask for many blessings, ask for all my prayers to manifest. Keep me healthy, keep me from getting sick, move enemies from my life, help me see small problems before they become large problems. Then I ask them, is everything good? Yeah, everything good. They don't need nothing. Okay, as long as I make sure they're good, they're going to automatically start taking care of the stuff that I need in my life. But when I get specific problems, you know, like when I got into with my neighbor, you know, had
What
What
to
if
go.
you feel like you're the most elevated and you're the one living? What if you're new to this whole ancestor thing? And you're like, nobody in my family is somebody I would call on because I can call on them when they were here. So what about that? Is it safe for them to get in front of their altar and do a blanket to the unknown? Because they don't feel safe calling on those that they know. It's safe to call on the unknown.
Yes, that's why you're saying those known and unknown, all those who are sold that I do not remember. And like I said, just because once we feel like we are elevated, but you are just somebody who returned, that's why you feel elevated now, because you're somebody who returned. Like a lot of us that are into this path right now, we came into this path as older people that came back in order to clean up the boo-boo that's in our families due to the traumas from slavery. So a lot of us feel like I'm my parents' parents. I feel like, you know, I always feel like that. I can't really go to my parents for wise counsel. I always related more to my grandfather. But I can still learn things from my parents because just by them being here before me, it's still some experiences that they have that I don't have. And so I respect that. I respect them just enough because I could have been on the damn napkin somewhere or down the toilet. I ain't have to be here, so I acknowledge and I respect them just for that alone. But we are dealing with, like I said, the hierarchy of our ancient ancestors. We call on those the first manifestation of our ancestor that was walking with God, one of the oldest people in our family lineage that have been through everything, that have incarnated many times, and have been through anything that we could possibly think of. Anything that you could do, any magic that you could do, somebody in our family has already done. You know, somebody has already done everything that we possibly want to do in the level at which they can do it in their time. So it's we didn't call it on those ones, but even though if you feel like you knew your grandma, she had problems in her life, while you know her, she's not the same once she dies. If you can, you know, you should be able to see the signs of elevation. One thing when you see your ancestors, the sign that they have elevated is that you will see them looking like they did when they was in their prime. You see an ancestor come looking like they was when they was in their healthiest. They have clean clothes on, clean dress, a clean suit, smiling, you know. But if you see your ancestor wearing the clothes that they had on when they died, or clothes at their funeral, or looking like they did when they was old, or looking dirty, that signs that your ancestors are unelevated. But if you see them in a light and all this type of stuff, they are qualified to give you guidance in life. But for the most part, I only call the names of the people that I know because I know them. I'm not talking to an individual specifically when I'm going to my altar. Unless I know something that that individual did. You know, grandma, please help me get this peach cobbler right. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I want to make vegan peach cobbler for my business. I know you ain't no vegan, but you know, still give me some of that ashe so I can put it in this peach cobbler and make it taste as close to yours as I could in the vegan way. Then I'm saying something specific, but for the most part, I'm calling on the collective of my ancestors. Then you have an ancestral spokesperson speaking on behalf of everybody else. And then you're making it to where your ancestors who are unelevated and not qualified, they're not coming in the circle. They may be out here. I'm only dealing with those elevated ancestors. If they're not elevated, they ain't gonna be able to come across it because it's protected by those who are elevated.
I have a question about, I want to ask about Heshu. Okay, we know that basically he clears a path to our ancestors.
No,
He doesn't?
as you do not clear no path to your ancestors.
Okay, please explain Heshu to me because I know they say that we're basically supposed to acknowledge him, but are we supposed to do that before we even attempt to build an altar? Like, are we supposed
No,
to?
you're supposed to acknowledge your Ori and your ancestors first.
Okay.
Then out of the succession of the Orisha, it'll be Legba, Legwa, Eshu. After that, first is your head, then it's your ancestors, then it's the Orisha. Because like I said, your grandmama gave more power to cause havoc in your life than Eshu. Somebody that whipped your ass in real life. Somebody that fought for you in real life. Somebody that cursed people out for me in real life. I'm gonna feel, why wouldn't she be able to have that same power in the spiritual world? Somebody that, you know, really fought for you in real life. How does SU have more power than that? Somebody that I actually know. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they all in it. So yeah, you open up, you know, you deal with SU to go through to other Orishas, like if you don't have. That's like saying if you don't have an Oshun shrine, but you have a SU, you can talk to any spirit with SU. But you ain't talking to your ancestors with SU. Some ancestors don't even want to deal with Orisha stuff at all. Right. Some you deal with them with their own shells. You talking to them in their own voice. Mm-hmm.
I got a routine down. So, but the time is not always the same time of the day. But I do it like when I wake up, you know, shower, cleanse myself, then I go to sleep, and then I go about my day. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Okay, well that's fine. You doing, but you still got to have it. The time is before I start my day. That's the first thing I'm doing.
Yeah, no, that's how I'm doing, but I don't start my day at the same time.
So that's cool. I mean, they still know that. Okay. After she wash up, then
Yeah.
that's when it's time to bombard her because they always around trying to bombard you and stuff. They always giving us messages. We just ain't tuned in to the subtleness of the message.
I didn't even draw the line.
Okay, you can always add them in.
Just go every backward.
You can always add the lines in.
Okay. I'm like, do I have to start the whole?
Y'all got any questions that y'all wanna ask online? Anything else? Anybody else? No questions? Since I already have my altar up, do I have to take it down and draw the circle? No, you don't. If you already have your ancestor altar up, and you've already been dealing with your ancestors in a certain way, the energy is already there. But you can draw a circle around your whole altar. You know, like I said, some people have tables up, which is fine, because my ancestor altars took different forms and been at different locations in my house. Now it's back on the floor again. At one point in time, it was like a table. It was on the table with a white cloth. Now it's back on the floor. I just always say that it should start on the floor, because remember, you know, this altar would be, our ancestor would be buried right under there. We have somebody buried right under there. We start the circle right on top of somebody's body, essentially. And we come, you know, we come from the earth. So we go back to the earth, so it starts on the floor because we grounded, we're rooted. Then after I've established that space and that time, then I want to start building my altar. I can put a table over here. The circle's still here. Then I can put a table over here. But you can always move your table and make the circle too. Then I put the table and white cloth and start adding pictures and start adding all this other stuff to it, you know, and you can build your altar up and look that way. But no, you don't have to take it down. Especially if your ancestors are already talking to you in that way. You're already meeting with them. Because like I said in Abara Major, he who knows does not die like he who does not know. He who does not know does not die like he who knows. And on Mature Prime Major, it's the old dude of the person who did not have the ancestral rights and did not know what to do, but his ancestors still help us because we are ignorant of certain knowledge. So our ancestors still respond to us. You know, I got on my path. I tell anybody I got on my path. I used to pray to Jesus. You know, if I thought I was talking to Jesus, God is universal. If you think that your ancestor, if you would be scared if your grandmama came to you looking like she looked when she was living, if that scared you, if it'd be more comfortable with your ancestor coming to you looking like an angel, and that's how they're gonna come. You know, even though that's not the true form that they're in, but that's how they present themselves to you, so you can be comfortable. Any more questions? Or comments or add-ons? So can we start collectively like studying more about African Americans that fought for our liberation, and did things that advanced the earth and advanced our society. You know, like Benjamin Banneker, George Washington Carver.
The book I'm reading now is Ancestral. And it's real, you know, like people that travel.
Yeah, so we need to start acknowledging these ancestors more. In Nigeria, they got a Orisha named Moremi. Moremi helped them defeat the Igbo people, which the Igbo and Yoruba people are both Nigerians, live next door to each other. But that Orisha don't have nothing to do with us because we might have some Igbo blood inside of us. But this is a savior who fought for their liberation, who they acknowledge and elevated to become Orisha. And they do ceremonies and festivals for that particular spirit. We need to be doing more of that collectively for people who fought for us in this society, so we can have a higher level of power for us collectively as people. Because there's a reason why we at the bottom of the totem. How do we become to a higher level of the totem? By building our ancestors up more and more and more. So when all the stuff hit the fan, we will be in a better position. Okay. You got any questions about the ancestors?
questions too.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on Zoom. I know everybody here. Janine,
I'm here.
you got something to say? You ain't got no question?
I always have questions, but mostly I just wanted to know, are you going to be teaching more classes like this? And if so, how do we keep in touch with you so we can get in on the action?
Yeah, I'm actually trying to organize and have like WhatsApp classes and have different means of communicating. And have more formal, like official things, because I'll be having a lot of people. So it got to be something that I do collectively and start having like somebody that can handle the different social media platforms.
Yeah.
But, in general, I'd be kind of all over the place. I'm working on getting organized. In general, you can always chop it up with me anytime, or you can catch me and I got time. And we can always set up something personal. And
Okay.
once I get organized, which is my plan to have everything in place by the first fiscal quarter of fiscal new year 2021. And I'm gonna have I'm really working on starting like a spiritual church, African central, where our foundation is African spirituality, but we're not just limited to Ifa or Yoruba. It's anything African, whether it's Khan, whether it's voodoo, whether it's hoodoo. We can implement all those things, or even implement some other spiritual modalities, yoga, meditation, dietary things. I think a lot of those things, self-help, a lot of those things I needed for our spiritual practice, not just this or that. I'm good at magic, but I'm an unhealthy person. Like I don't. We need to start incorporating a more holistic practice for some stuff. Some of the stuff is just you need to say affirmations every day instead of just offering the roots to the Shango. Do that and say affirmations every day. General stuff. You having problems with your spouse, y'all need to write out a list on why y'all love each other every day. Wash each other's face. We need to have other levels of prescription and the stuff that we're doing relative to us and our experiences. Not just, like I said, not just doing things in a straight Cuban way or straight African way. We need to do things in a practical way and realize what are some of our problems that we face. It's unique to us. How we gonna deal with it?
Well, I just want you to know that on behalf of Vibes, thank you for being our guest for this class. And I enjoyed it. I was looking forward to it. Hopefully we can have you back again to teach another class for us. I don't have any questions. You kind of answered all my questions throughout the class, the lecture. So thank you so much. This was just amazing, and I hope that we can have you back again to teach something else for us.
Okay, yeah, anytime. Thank you. I appreciate you all. Thank you, Janine and wait.
Sue-Ann still on?
Sue-Ann.
Hi.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah.
There she is.
I'm on.
Y'all see our friend? That That was my camera person. Yeah, the next class I'll be a little more I'll be more of this my first Zoom class, so I'll be more synchronized with my slides and
Oh,
I
you're
have
fine.
visual stuff.
It was perfect. It was perfect, just the way it was. I
Okay.
learned a lot.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you all. May ancestors, Ola Damare and Rumala bless you. And all the Risa and all the spirits of heaven be with you all.
Asheo.
You as well. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Odabo.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.